Welcome, critters. I'm Claire Jones, your devoted host of the Sacred Reading CR podcast, where we discuss and examine critical role episodes, plot lines, characters, and players through the lens of sacred reading practices. This particular episode is about Campaign 1, Episode
41.
41, Part 2. I have no idea. I was like, I don't know at this point. Joining me today is Petall.
Hello.
Obviously, I prepped for this episode far too long ago at this point, but we're here, we made it. So, the icebreaker for today is what is something that you're kind of snobby about?
Oh, that's an interesting question because I make a significant effort not to be snobby about things. So it's hard to pinpoint something that I'm actually snobby about. What am I snobby about?
I can go first if you want,
Yeah,
because I've
that
been
would that
thinking
would be
about this
good.
for a
I
little
need
bit
some
now.
time to think.
So, since I'm an author and I work in the indie publishing world, I have noticed that I can get fairly snobby when it comes to book covers
Mm,
and book cover designs because it is very common for indie authors to DIY their book covers, and
yeah.
even they might even hire illustrators or designers to help them with it. And I've talked to dozens of graphic designers over the last couple of years who sell book design services as part of their service packages. And as someone who is coming from a trained art history background, I have to say that the vast majority of them are not up to my standards.
That's fair.
And I feel kind of bad about it. I feel I have an inferiority complex about my superiority complex when it comes to book cover designs. And like I know people are just trying their best, and I understand the budget constraints that a lot of
hmm
the authors are dealing with. And so I've never talked about this before. I don't really make it a, soapbox of mine, but I am generally disappointed by, you know, book cover designs.
Hmm, that makes sense.
So I am a little bit snobby when it comes to the quality of book cover designs.
That's very fair. I really am struggling to come up with anything because I think if I notice myself getting snobby about something, I make a concerted effort to not be snobby about it.
What
And
have you
so it's,
noticed yourself getting snobby about in the past?
hmm, I, even that's hard too.
Yeah. I know you have a very high interest in the quality of D&D streams, I think, may fall under that category in terms of um, what you like in D&D streams, maybe?
Yeah, that could be true, but it's kind of hard because I think every single D&D stream that I've watched, I've enjoyed. I don't
Mhm.
know if I've ever like watched one that I'm like I wasn't a fan of that. I think like unless it's like the I guess like because I have since finishing like campaign one of Critical Role been gradually going back and watching all the one shots that I haven't seen
Hmm.
and some of the like older one shots where like some of the guests I'm like I don't really like your attitudes and like
Mm.
there's some like I don't know just like weird things that weren't very well thought through like I know that there was a uh one where they kind of let the audience like submit anything to happen if they made a high enough donation and some
Oh,
of the
right.
things I'm like they should have moderated that. But I don't know if that's snobbery or just me being like that some elements of this are problematic.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a standard of gaming etiquette, maybe,
Yeah,
because we don't even want to talk about the Wendy's one shot.
no.
And so I think there are, whether it's Critical Role or other D&D streams out there, D&D campaigns, I think both of us have a higher standard of gaming etiquette.
Hmm. Yeah, I have very little patience for if like the people aren't adhering to gaming etiquette or people aren't making an effort to make sure that they're not like playing into problematic tropes. It's one thing if it like comes up like accidentally, but there are sometimes that there's like some very blatant examples that it's like, there could have been more work here. This is very clearly not okay.
I think that's valid.
Okay. I just wasn't sure whether that counted as
Yeah.
snobbery or just like regular standards.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think to us it is regular standards, but it's not to everyone.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, um, I think that can happen a lot in the world of gaming, whether it's like online video games or tabletop role playing or even board games. There's some people who play board games very aggressively and it's not collaborative and,
Hmm.
and I think there should be a better standard for gaming etiquette in those
Yeah.
situations. Well, please join us as we embark on this exciting adventure in story analysis and self-reflection in order to deepen our understanding of the world of ourselves and the world around us. Wow, it has been a while since we've recorded one of these. As always, we love hearing your own insights and stories as well. So please comment, like, subscribe below. And ready? All right, let's dive in. So, as we open this episode, take it away.
Yeah, so in the ruins of Gilmore's glorious goods, a woman rushes up and asks Vox Machina to leave, threatening to kill them if they don't. Vex says that they're looking for Gilmore. Sherry then emerges to join the other woman and tells them all to come into a hidden chamber with a teleportation circle within. Vex tells Trinket to guard the unconscious bodies of the thieves that they just dealt with in the previous half of the episode. Vox Machina then recognizes the woman who threatened them as Empress Alda Taldori, the wife of Uriel. Her children are also present in the chamber. She tells them that she does not believe that Uriel survived and that Gilmore saved them. It is then that Vox Machina notices Gilmore slumped unconscious in a chair. Vax rushes over to Gilmore to checking to see if he is alive. He is charred, sweating feverishly, and has lost a lot of blood. Vex and Keyleth rush to stabilize him, and Pike heals Gilmore, closing a massive wound on his chest. Vax pulls him into his lap and begins smoothing his hair. Sherry then asks who Garthok is, as he's still with the group, and Vox Machina assures her that he is safe. She asks him to keep his distance, as she does not trust him yet. After many minutes, Gilmore wakes up, lolling his head to make eye contact with Vax. He tells Vax that he always thought that he would see him in his last moments. Vax notes that Gilmore has had a bad day. Gilmore says that he has had worse. Vex then tells him that he looks like shit, and in response, Gilmore lifts his hand to try to cast a spell on himself, but doesn't have the energy to complete it. Keyleth tells him that he needs to rest. Gilmore says that he was worried about Vox Machina and went back for them. He said he was only able to grab the children. Uriel pushed him away, and Gilmore said that he later found him dead. He says he also saved Asun and the Dragon Girl. Sherry says the two of them went topsoil. Percy says they're trying to collect people at Greyskull Keep. Vex apologizes for not waiting for Gilmore. Gilmore says that he is glad that they did not because it means that they are alive. Gilmore then reports that most of the Tal'Dorei Council has died, and the majority of the Cloudtop district was destroyed. He says that when he saw Thordak, he noticed that there was something in his chest, but he couldn't make out what. He said that it pulsed with power. Gilmore then asks for water, and Grog offers him a potion instead to help him survive the trip to the keep. Scanlan then asks Gilmore if he is a dragon. Gilmore says that he wishes that he was, and if Vox Machina can find a way to become a dragon, to let him know. Percy recommends going to the clasp to ask for help and asks Garthok to help them make that connection. Garthok agrees. Vex says that she is going to seek out the gold that the bandits left in a well. Scanlan asks if that's a good idea, as Thordak may know about it and try to stop them. Keyleth says that she also thinks it's a bad idea and tries to convince them to ignore it. The party decides to split up, one group going to the keep and the other going to the well, and once everybody has returned, they will go and speak to the clasp. As the group splits, Keyleth pulls Vax aside to speak to him, but he pulls away and joins his sister to go to the well. Keyleth then speaks into the earring and asks him to talk Vex out of it. Garthok who is accompanying the well group, shows them where they can find the clasp later, disabling some traps and entering what looks to be a wine cellar. He lifts off the top of a whiskey barrel and climbs into it, revealing a hidden ladder. Afterwards, Scanlan locates the treasure well, and the party finds no traps or other people. They also find no treasure, as someone else has beat them to it. They debate trying to track down whoever took it to take it from them. Uh, Garthok decides to return to the clasp at this point. After following some tracks a little ways, the well group discovers that the treasure has been taken to Thordak, so they decide to abandon the treasure and return to the keep. Jumping back to the keep group, they find themselves in an attempted mugging, which they easily scare off. They decide to take the secret passage back to Greyskull Keep, entering through the pantry. Salva greets them and offers to help get the children settled. Keyleth finds a bed for Gilmore to rest. The Will group arrives back soon after. Keyleth asks Vax if he managed to convince Vex to leave the treasure alone. She overhears this and tells Keyleth that he did, and Keyleth thanks Vax. And it is at that point that the episode ends.
Yeah, so it was a short second half, but I think there's a lot of important character dynamics that happen here.
Absolutely.
Like, yay, Gilmore's alive, first and foremost.
That's the probably the highlight of the episode is
Yes, yes.
Gilmore being alive.
And, I think it's also interesting that Matt decided to keep the wife of Uriel alive and the children alive, but kill off Uriel.
Yeah, it is very interesting.
hmm And we will also know more about Assume and the Dragonborn. Trying to remember her name at this point, but she was on the council later on. But I want to know what was going on in Matt's head when he decided how to mete out the death.
Yeah, it is interesting because I feel like when I'm writing things and there's some big disaster sort of thing. I like to do a lot of stories where things are not entirely within my control, so I like to kind of randomize who lives and who dies because that's a
Mm,
lot more like reality. Like
mm,
in reality, people don't survive just because they're important to the plot and things
mm.
like that, but obviously there's also value in picking and choosing who survives and the narrative significance behind that.
Yeah,
And so I do wonder how I don't think he randomized it, but I wonder how he selected who would live and who would die.
yeah. It's interesting you mentioned writing character deaths because, yes, I do consider narrative significance, but I also consider character propensity when I'm deciding who lives and who dies because I think it would make sense the more reckless or the more risk tolerant characters also have a higher chance of death at the
Hmm.
because they do tend to take actions that result in death sometimes.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so that's interesting that you talk about, narrative, I think is important. I'm writing an 8-book series right now, and I want the stakes to increase as the series progresses, right? And so
Hmm.
so means the death increases as the
Yeah.
series progresses. And I think I've this is a secret, but I don't know who's going to tell my secret. I think I've decided that one of the primary characters is actually going to meet a death at the end of the
Interesting.
series. Because I think it makes sense for their character decisions to put themselves in that situation.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I like that. I
Hmm.
love a good character death. Like,
Yeah.
if it's done well, I love a good character death.
Yeah, yeah, because so far the deaths have been side characters and like not anyone that we're too emotionally attached to at this point. And it's
Mm-hmm.
more narrative development for the primary characters that are going through, the loss of what's going on. But
Mm-hmm.
I was
And
thinking
there's
that,
in D&D, there often is not a lot of control in who lives and
yes,
dies, like because a lot of that is determined by gameplay.
yeah,
But by deciding to kill Uriel like off screen,
yeah,
then that makes it an active decision.
yeah.
I honestly think in order for the story to go the way that it did, I think Uriel had to die. I think he like in some ways it's like a big heroic moment that doesn't quite make up for his flaws but does
Mhm.
show that his heart's in the right place. I think that it is also very fitting for the way that none of his plans seem to work out, that
I
his
mean,
plan for the
my question is, was it heroic? Because we don't know the details of how
That's
exactly he
true.
died. I mean, he presumably died during that initial attack on the Cloud Top District. And so we don't know if he was running away when he was hit. We don't know if he was facing the dragons when he was hit. We don't know if he was attempting to shield anyone else while he was hit.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think it does mention that he like at least got his wife and kids away. So,
Okay.
which
Okay.
does have like it is heroic in some ways. It might not be as like heroic as like trying to save the entire city, but he was obviously not thinking of his own safety first.
I mean, I don't know if he was even capable of trying to save the whole city at that point anyway.
No, I think that would be an impossible task, but I
Yeah.
mean there are people who would try.
Yeah. Yeah. But that makes me think of the different characters in Vox Machina and their propensity for risk taking and their prevalence of death in this campaign as well.
Hmm.
Because so far we've seen the death of Vex, I think, has happened.
I don't think that's happened. Has that
Hasn't
happened?
happened yet? Okay, never mind then. Um, no, that hasn't happened yet. Who has died so far? Has anyone died so far?
I don't think anybody has died, at least on stream, because
Okay.
Pike had a death before they
Okay.
started streaming, but I don't think anybody has died yet on
Okay.
stream.
Well, then we'll put a pin in that.
That's a conversation for
For
some later
later.
episodes.
Yes, yes, yes. But I think it's also important to note, because you're right, the gameplay is randomized sometimes when it comes to that stuff. But I think there's also purposefulness in Matt's decisions as well as the character's decisions.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
I've just been thinking a lot about the twins lately, which is probably why I was bringing up Vex, is they have very much drawn toward each other during this crisis, more so
Hmm.
than being cohesive with the group as a whole. They are
Well,
very,
it's personal for them. Like,
and I think it's their trauma response
yeah, it's
is
personal for them. They've been through this before. It's yeah, it's a trauma response.
it's very much within their characters to cling to each other over all else.
Like a lot of their character arcs do have to do with like learning to trust the other members of Vox Machina and accepting them as part of their family as well.
Hmm.
Because it's true, their tendency is to like cling together.
Hmm.
Like even though like Vax, like he decided to join Vex to go to the well and stuff like
Hmm.
that, and brushed off Keyleth, who he's
That's what,
already admitted having feelings for because he knew that Keyleth would try to like talk him out of it.
yeah.
And
But I mean, Keyleth has mildly rejected him at this point. or at
That
least,
is true, yes.
or at least, I don't know if it was a flat out rejection, but it was a pause button
Yeah.
of like, no comment.
Hmm.
Um, and so I think, I don't know, I keep thinking of like a sibling versus only child response to the in-group dynamics that are going on right now. And I think Keela
Yeah.
is having a very much only child response to the in-group dynamics.
Yeah, that's a good way of describing it.
I'm an
Although
only
I
child, so I understand it.
I am not an only child.
And so the siblings are siblinging. Um, and I think, at least from my personal experiences in the past, I often have felt like an outsider when I see that strong familial tie happen.
Mm,
Because that's something I can never touch, right? That's
yeah.
something that I can never insert myself in, or um like, not even that I would want to interrupt it, but yeah, insert myself in some shape or form. And it I am feeling for Keyleth in this moment because she is reaching out for connection, even
Hmm.
though it's a not the healthiest method for reaching out for connection,
Yeah.
which I also very much understand. And she's being rebuffed because Vax also might be viewing her pause as a rebuff. And so it's like a rebuff
Hmm.
against a rebuff, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it very much is, like, as you said, also, like, oh, we're in danger. I need to stick close to my sister.
Yeah.
And it's just like the kind of like closing the others out in a way.
And for Keyleth, she's like, oh, I need to stick close to my found family that I have here, this group
Exactly. And
have.
she's trying to keep everybody safe and everybody together. Like
Yes.
Scanlan, it was interesting. Scanlan was the first one to bring up that maybe going to the well wasn't the best idea, but then Keyleth picked it up and was like the loudest voice with that. But like I think it very much came from a desire. Like a lot of the times her like when she's like bringing up things that she's not comfortable with and like wants reassurance on. It's things that she doesn't morally agree with, but this
Mhm.
time seems to be a lot more rooted in wanting to make sure that everybody stays safe and her like thinking that everybody staying together is safer. And
Yeah.
it's true, like this is a risky mission. It's
Yeah.
and but they ultimately do like make the right choice. Like they go scout it out, and then once they realize that pursuing the treasure would take them into greater danger, they know back to the keep.
Yeah. I can't help but thinking of her actions in this framework of the only child syndrome because uh, I think there's an argument here for all of her attempts at leading the group here because she's trying to lead morally, she's trying to lead the safety, she's trying to lead
Hmm.
their decisions in their response to the situation at hand. I think that can stem from an only child reaction because we always make the decisions for ourselves because we're the only ones to make the decisions, right?
Hmm. That makes sense.
And so it's often hard when only children are put into group situations where they have to consider everyone else's decision making too, because that's just not our default. Like
Hmm.
oh, well, like I made the decision, and so that's the thing that's going to happen, right?
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. Like if you're growing up with other people around, there's a lot of like collaborative skills that you have to learn in order to like, not kill each other. And uh it makes sense that like people have like who have siblings, particularly siblings that are like close enough to them in age that they
Yeah,
like grew up together. But like it makes sense that like we would be learning those skills from a younger age than
yeah,
only children.
yeah. Because it's almost like I've made all the decisions in my brain. Why isn't your brain following the decision-making process of my brain? Like, there's another brain here. Like, wait a minute. And it's not, I don't think it's egotistical, and it's not like we're
No.
trying to make ourselves the sole decision maker of the group. It's just that's our default when we how we grow up.
Hmm.
And so I
It's
see
just
a
how
lot of,
like brains are wired and trained as they're
yeah,
like in the earliest stages of life.
yeah, yeah. I've been thinking a lot about this with Keyleth over the years, is that there's just so many, and this is true of Marisha as a person too, is that there's so many similarities between me and her, that it's almost uncomfortable for me because I see a lot of my less than savory decisions and behaviors mirrored back to me through
Hmm.
Keyleth's decisions and Marisha's decisions and the way that they interact with the world. And I'm like, that's rude.
Yeah. Yeah, I know you've talked about that before, how a lot of your discomfort for Keyleth at times just comes from a discomfort with your own self and you seeing yourself in her.
Yeah, but there's a lot of interesting in-group dynamics that are going on right now because I also view Percy's reactions to all of this very fascinating as well because he is he's more out of all of the ones in the group, I think he's the one that's most using cold logic in this, or
Hmm.
attempting to use cold logic in this.
Yeah, and he's also the one who like brought up like gathering everybody at the keep. Like it's very much like it seems very much like the sort of like leader thinking of like, oh, get all your assets in one place and then we can like regroup and have this like point
Yeah,
of like it really seemed like he was like when he was talking about gathering people at the keep, like yes, it's also for everybody's safety, but I think it was also like let's get all of our allies together
yeah,
and so we can like figure out what we're gonna do about this.
yeah, which is also I think a big proponent of his sibling upbringing as well.
Hmm.
Like we are safer when we have the family together.
Yeah,
Whoever
exactly.
is included in that family. Like we got Gilmore, great.
Yeah.
That is a core piece of the family.
Hmm. Yeah.
You know if Gilmore has siblings?
I don't know. I don't think we ever find out.
We do know where he's from. We
We
do
do
learn
know where
that
he's
later
from.
on in the campaign. And like we actually, I think we meet his parents later on in the campaign, if I'm remembering correctly.
I don't remember whether or not we do, but
I think
very
he's the only
possible.
child now that I'm thinking about it. But
Yeah.
apparently I
You
have.
know what is interesting, now that we're on the topic of Gilmore, it's like tied me to like Gilmore and then the twins, is that I'm pretty sure, I don't think I wrote it down in my notes, but I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly, that part of the reason why Vex was wanting to go after the treasure was to recover some of Gilmore's
Yes.
like stolen magic items.
Yeah.
Whereas I think Keyleth was viewing it as just like Vex's usual like love
Yeah.
of money and
Yeah.
wanting to get richer. There was kind of like it's interesting because like as you said, as we talked about, like the twins are kind of like splitting off together and things like that. And but like Vex is still like she's improved, like she's grown as a character. She's still thinking of others. Like I think she's there's also a part of her that's thinking like, oh, it would be great to have magic items at our disposal to help us with this. But there's also like an act for Gilmore, like to try to retrieve some of what he's lost.
I think there's a interesting dichotomy here between Percy's approach here and Vex's approach here, because Percy is like there's safety in people, and I think for Vex it's safety in things too.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Because the more things you have, especially valuable things, the better off you'll be, because that's definitely a trauma response for her too. Um,
Hmm.
and I think for like because she spent so much time alone with her brother or out there in the world, she equates more value to things, and Percy equates more value to people.
Absolutely. I think that's a very good point there.
Hmm. I mean, we're not seeing much from Grog beyond the whole red button use the skull um
Yeah, he
thing.
did give Gilmore a potion.
Yeah. Scanlan, we haven't really seen much from him beyond just trying to like father the group in a weird way.
Yeah, I did find it interesting that he was the first person to speak out against going to the well because he's usually one of the people that's like jumping right in and like spearheading like these crazy missions.
I
Like,
think that's all a facade too, though. Like
hmm
his wild and crazy guy persona, I think is so much a facade for him. And I think his response to the situation right now is not using that facade.
And I think it's a mix of being shaken from the dragon attack, but I think also him reevaluating things now that he knows he has a daughter.
Yeah. 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 It's almost like
But
the
yeah.
father switch was turned on.
Uh-huh.
And so he has to father someone.
Yeah.
He's like, I am father. Um, yeah, because Pike isn't actually present for this, right? Ashley's not there. I don't
I
think
think she is there. I think
she
she's
is.
on she's
Oh,
like
right, right. We
Skyping
were
in.
talking about
She did heal
Patch.
Gilmore.
Right. Yeah.
And I remember it being Ashley who talked about healing Gilmore and not Matt.
Yeah. 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 Well, personal experiences is the next step here. Anything that's coming to mind beyond my only child syndrome.
Yeah, I mean we've talked about a lot of interesting things. I think I'm also now starting to think a bit about my own responses in a crisis.
Hmm.
And I think it's some mix, I think depending on who I'm with, of like banding together and like isolating myself. Because there's an interesting thing, like I'm like the oldest child in my family, and so I've kind of like always been like the responsible one. And so I think I very much have a tendency to look out for others, but not look out for myself because I've often been like, I don't think my parents did this intentionally, but just kind of like been like, oh, like they're fine. Like,
Yeah.
and just like here, like do this to help your siblings. And like my own needs were kind of ignored. And so in the talking of like the sibling dynamic thing, I think that also plays out well in like not well, but it plays out like in a way that makes sense in my own like crisis response is I'll jump in and do what needs to be done and like try to make sure that everybody else is okay, but I'm not very good at like making sure I'm okay or I won't reach out for help and just try to deal with my own issues on my own.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's very interesting to see how people react to crisis individually and crisis in a group.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm definitely more of the isolation type because that's just my default. Um, and over the years, I've really, really, really had to intentionally train my skill set in peopling and like reaching out to people and like
Mm-hmm.
viewing people as valuable resources and valuable connections more so than stuff. I'm very much in the Vex category when it comes to like my stuff will keep me safe, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, but that's just a skill set that I've had to consciously grow over time.
Hmm.
And it's interesting, like I definitely relate to Vex in this situation. I relate to Keyleth in this situation. I also low-key relate to Grog too. Like, it's so easy to just want the big red button. Like, just
Yeah.
fix it, please.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Um, Personally, what's been going on in my life this week is that my car died. And
Oh
so
no.
I have been trying to decide what to do with that situation because I can't really afford a car payment at the moment. Um, so I think I've come to the decision that I'm going to be carless for a while and just
Hmm.
lean into not having a car. Um, because I am in a major metropolis. I have public transportation easily available to me. It's not going to be that hard to be without a car right now. And it supports my long-term goals to do so. Um, and so I'm going to have to rely a lot more on other people moving forward.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to lean into the trust exercise that
Hmm.
entails. Um, But, it's not a bad thing and it's not, I don't even say that it's a difficult thing. It's just, it doesn't come naturally to me. And so I
Hmm.
just have to like consistently remind myself that it's available. Other people are available.
Yeah. I mean, like helping each other like that and letting other people help us, which I think is the harder piece
Yes.
of that, is all a part of like community building.
Yes.
Like a big part of community, like I think it's easy to think of community as just like people like hanging out and having fun together, but it is also helping each other out. And a part of that is being willing to ask for help and get support like in return, and sometimes not even in return because it's not like a exchange sort of
Yes.
thing, but it's, and I think like community building, especially that kind of community building of supporting each other, is like so important, not just for like the well-being of people and communities, but also for like bigger things like fighting fascism and trying to gain human rights and standing up for what you believe in, because we can't do these things on our own. And we all need to, like, if the government isn't going to support people, we need to support people, and we're stronger together and all those sorts of things. And so it all feeds into the bigger picture.
Yeah. I started this mutual aid resource network earlier this year, and I've also been discovering a lot of other community resource sharing platforms that exist out there that have been introduced to me. And this is my opportunity to actually walk the walk and talk the talk and be like, all
Hmm.
right, guys, I need a ride to the airport. Can anyone get me to the airport? Or does anyone have availability to drive me to the grocery store? That's it.
Yeah.
And be like, I will bake you a loaf of bread or a bunch of cookies or, whatever I can give in return.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
exactly.
those are the actions that I'm being called to make. Is there anything that's on your to-do list too?
I think mine is like a much smaller thing, but I can't remember whether I mentioned it last episode or if I just mentioned it outside of the recording. But my family recently got a new puppy,
Hmm.
and I love him very much, but he is a puppy and he is a lot of work. And I keep trying to like take on everything, and like every spare moment that I have, I'm like looking after him, but I've noticed myself like burning out and not resting. And I've been struggling to like ask for time to rest when I need it, because everybody else in my family is also super busy and also doing a lot with the puppy. And I don't want to put more on the other members of my family, but I also am recognizing that I'm not gonna have the energy to look after the puppy if I'm like burnt out and tired, and so I'm trying to figure out how to uh like ask for help and ask for the time that I need and trying to pinpoint the moments where it actually works because sometimes I like otherwise I reach a point where I'm like I need a break now, but now might not be the time when other people are available to give me a break because
Hmm.
they're also busy with other things. And so I need to, I think, start identifying those moments sooner and like asking for help and support and breaks so that I'm not reaching a burnout place and that I am like getting the rest I need to function.
Yeah. Yeah, that is the one thing that I make sure to repeat in my mutual aid resource network is like you have to put your own oxygen mask on first.
Hmm.
Like,
It's hard because I love the puppy. His name is Kalu, short for Kalua, and I love Kalu so much, and I want to spend all my time with him, but I also like I need I need rest.
we all do,
Puppies are a
honestly.
lot of work, and someday he'll get more independent and he can hang out with me while I'm resting in my room. But right now, he still needs a lot of supervision.
Yeah. Well, I'm wishing you the best of luck to make and reinforce those boundaries.
Thank you.
Hmm. Anything else before we start wrapping up?
I can't think of anything.
Put your own mask, oxygen mask on first. Re Reaffirm your boundaries. Invest in community. Find gold.
Fine
Because it
gold.
never hurts to have more.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Gilmore in your life, man.
Yeah. Yeah, Gilmore's great.
Well, this is powerful stuff that we're talking about here. And audience, we definitely encourage you to join us in this conversation. How have episodes like these impacted you in your own lives or, just Critical Role in general? We'd love to know. Special thanks to Petal for joining me for this episode. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I always love being here.
Next time, we'll be discussing Campaign 1, Episode 42, Part 1, and joining me will be Atlas, so I'm super excited for that. As always, I'm looking for more co-hosts and guests, so if you're interested in nerding out with me, please let me know. In the meantime, please comment, like, subscribe below, follow us on Tumblr at Sacred Reading CR for all the juicy updates, and I did update it recently, so, I may or may not be on top of my shit. Just barely, just barely. Until next time, may all beings be peaceful, may all beings be free, and be the chaotic good you wish to see in the world. Take care, guys.